First of all, let's separate the egg whites from the yolks, taking care that no yolk remains in the whites. Now let's whip egg whites until nice and fluffy peaks form. Of course, make sure first that the bowl and the mixer are perfectly clean and dry. Use the room temperature eggs, start at a lower speed and increase the speed as you whip. This will help in creating a stable whipped egg whites. We don't need it to be really stiff and glossy, which I used for meringue recipe, airy cakes and pancakes. For this cherry cake, thin, fluffy peaks will be enough. I spent on whipping around 4 minutes, but rather focused on the consistency and not on the time. Now it's time for egg yolks. I'll whip it adding 350 grams of sugar, but you can add less to your taste, and 11 grams of baking powder. I'll whip it till the volume of the beaten yolks will increase, the texture will go from liquid to thick, and the color will become a light yellow. Sugar will almost melt. Usually it takes around 3 to 4 minutes. Here I'm adding 11 grams of baking powder and 400 grams of cottage cheese. I forgot to add baking powder earlier while starting to whip egg yolks with sugar, but it's not a problem for this recipe. This cake will be very fluffy and tasty anyway. That's why I really love it. Now I use blender to blend the cheese and create a really smooth texture of the cake with no cheese grains in it. It takes me about 3 minutes. Now add 330 grams of creamy wheat. After about 2 minutes of whipping with blender, a creamy wheat absorbs moisture and swells, so a texture becomes pretty thick. It must become like a pudding. If you'll need a little more of creamy wheat for it, you can add more, but make sure to not overdo it, or the cake will become too dense. Blend till texture will become smooth again. Now it's time to add whipped egg whites. I add it by parts and mix it with spoon gently but thoroughly. After adding egg whites, the dough will become more liquid again. Today I'll use two baking molds. The smaller mold is square, it's 20.5 by 20.5 by 5.5 centimeters, and the bigger one is 33.5 by 23.5 by 5.5 centimeters. But you can definitely use one big standard mold. Just be sure to not to use a deep sponge cake mold with 7 or more centimeters by depth, or the cake have a chance to become raw in the middle and burnt around the edges. I melted 30 grams of butter and cover the molds with it thoroughly, so my cakes will be easy to take out after baking. I fill up the both forms to half as the cake grows in the volume during baking. Now I add 500 grams of preheated cherries, dividing it on bigger and smaller parts between my molds. You can use both fresh or frozen cherries. Today I have frozen cherries. But do not defrost cherries before baking, or the cake will be sticky. After adding cherries, please be sure to drown them in a mass of dough, so the top of the cake doesn't burn. My bigger mold goes to oven first. Oven is preheated to 200 degrees Celsius. And after some time, my smaller mold is also ready. Baking time for the smaller mold was around 35 minutes, and for the bigger one it was around 45 minutes. But your cake can take some more time. It totally depends on your oven. So you must concentrate not on the time, but rather on the color. It must become golden and the dough become dense. The best way to check the consistency of the dough is to use a long wooden stick. If it comes out dry, no dough pieces on it, even in the very center of the cake is ready. If during baking you see that the top of the cake has started to burn while the inside is still raw, cover it with the file of baking paper and leave it in the oven until it's ready. It's so soft. I'm so happy with the result. Do try this recipe. You'll love it. Hope this video was useful for you. Please support my channel with like and subscribe, because soon you'll find here a lot of delicious recipes all over the world. Hugs, see you, and have a wonderful day. One more piece. Just can't resist.